Bristol Town Council work session to order. Today is Tuesday, February 17th, 2026 at 7 p.m. We will start off with our Pledge of Allegiance. Kathy Antonelli, will you do this tonight?
Oh, no.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Go through roll call, start to my left. Doug B. Smith. Here. Kathy Burke.
Here.
Greg Kaholsky.
Here.
Jeff Beachy is here. Absent from council, Dean Renfro. Off to my left, Town Marshal Steve Freeman.
Here.
Legal Counsel Alex Bowman. Here. Clerk Treasurer Kathy Antonelli.
Present.
Town Manager Mike Yoder.
Present.
And Fire Chief Nick Hance.
Here.
All right. Everybody had a chance to review the agenda.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, any additions, corrections, or modifications?
Nope.
Okay, if not, the agenda will stand as published. And we will jump right into the report. So
Okay,
Mike, I'm gonna turn it over to you.
we have Kyle Carlson from Baker Tilly joining us this evening. So tonight, I'd like to spend some time with you folks, zeroing in a bit on what your desire is for residential growth in the town. We've talked about it some in the past. With the Bristol Commons project and also with we have the other Mottville Road project. As we've talked in the past, we're probably going to have to come up with some sort of way of helping them pay for the infrastructure, the road, the street, water, sewer, at least within what our right of way is. And the most logical way to do that is with a tip. But there's a difference between rental, if they're all rental units, they're a regular tip. We just capture the increment. If it's home ownership, then it's a residential tip. But there's significant differences in the amount of increment we can collect from either one of those. So using the Bristol Commons project, which is a real life project, which we didn't approve, but we have real numbers, and I've asked Baker Tilly to use that to show us the difference in increment that we can collect between ownership and rentals, if that was all ownership versus if it was all rentals. And before we're done tonight, if you could give me a bit more clarity on what kind of housing you want to attract. Because honestly, I thought the Bristol Commons project was what we were kind of looking for, and then you didn't approve it. So just some clarity on what we're looking for, and that'll help me as I'm, getting inquiries from folks. If you don't want any residential at all, of course, I love businesses and manufacturing, but I think we do want some residents in town. So with that, Kyle, this is all your show for a while.
All right, you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
All right, so Kyle Carlson, Baker Tilly, you guys probably remember seeing me, especially with the annual tip report, but municipal advisor for the town and the RDC, so good to see you guys again. As Mike said, we wanted to look at the Commons project, look at it, all the homes were sold units versus if all the homes were rented units. And for this particular project, we were looking at 36 units in phase 1 and 24 units in phase 2, so that gives you an idea of the amount of units. So we're gonna dive into property tax a little bit. So that's fun, but there's, as we kind of touched on this when we were going through the TIP report last summer and talked a little bit about SCA 2025 and some of the deduction and credit changes that were going to take shape, really starting in 2026 all the way through 2031, that change is going to phase in over time. And so you're going to see that here. So if we start with all the for sale units, this first page here is just looking at phase 1. So looking at, building 8 homes a year over a 3-year span, building, 8 homes in 26, 8 homes in 27, 8 homes in 2028, and then their assessments lagging behind that. You can see with this estimate, we're assuming that all the homes are purchased at $280,000 and assessed at 90% of the purchase price. So that's just an assumption that we made in this case. And then that's really going to drive your gross assessed value as these homes are built over this 3-year span. But the standard and supplemental deduction, per SCA 1/2025 are gonna ramp up over time, and that's what footnote 3 is gonna explain in this analysis. Is, in 2028, the standard deduction is 30,000 and the supplemental deduction is 52% of the bill. So in 2029, the standard deduction is gonna start to phase out with 20,000 and then 57% for your supplemental in 2029. And then for 2030, 10,000 standard and 62% supplemental, and then finally in 2031, the standard deduction completely gone, and you have a supplemental deduction of 66%. So you'll notice these changes, over the next 4 or 5 years, even when you look at your property tax bill, if you own a home and you'll notice these subtle changes, but basically, if you look at 2031, the 66% of the assessed value is deducted, so the property tax bill is starting at 33% of the assessed value, and you're multiplying that by the town's tax rate. In this case, we're assuming that a SIP is created, so you would back out the school's referendum rate as well. And then as you get down here in the supplemental homestead credits, there's also new legislation that says that a credit for the lesser of $300 or 10% of the property tax liability for each home will be applied after everything else. And so in this case, looking in 2028, essentially there would be a $246 credit on this size of a home, per home that's being applied as well. And really what this is showing is that, while homes are good, to have in your town or in your unit, it is getting a little bit harder, to kind of use those revenues towards an incentive because there's, what's good for the property taxpayers is there's the breaks and it's really helping the property tax bill or affecting circuit breaker. But it can be a little bit harder to generate revenues from sold homes is what this is really showing. I know that was a lot. Is there any questions on just how property taxes are calculated on a home?
So Kyle, you're saying the deductions are going to increase over a 3-year period? Is that correct?
Yes. We're really starting in 2026, but since these homes would take a little bit of time to be built, we're showing from 2028 to 2031. But the span is basically the standard deduction being removed and the supplemental deduction coming on. But that supplemental deduction is overriding the standard. It's not just replacing it, it's providing more relief than there otherwise would have been.
Okay. So if you compare that to your current homestead exemption, it's going to increase the deduction. In
Yeah, so
essence,
if you compare it, like say we're looking at your 25 tax bill and then you wait 5 years and you look at your 2031, you'll notice that there's more supplemental deduction on your home. And it varies, based on what your value of your home is. It's obviously gonna vary, but that's generally what you're gonna see.
okay, so in other words, someone who owns a home in the state of Indiana will see a lower tax bill in the coming years. Is that a safe way to put it?
I would say, in some cases, yes. It depends on where your tax rate is as opposed to the circuit breaker. So you can only pay, you're capped at 1% of the gross assessed value. So, we're looking at $252,000 gross assessed value here. So you can only pay 1% of that. In your guys' case, with where your rate is and the level of homes, even in 2028, there wouldn't be any circuit breaker. So the property taxpayer would actually see a lower bill. In other units where maybe the tax rate is higher or the home values are higher, some of it could just reduce circuit breaker. But in this case, we're showing a full effect to the property tax bill.
Okay, thanks.
And then the credit at the end is really just completely a new thing that also provides relief to the taxpayer of a homeowner that files.
Okay.
And then phase 2, I won't go through this, but after a couple of years, using the assumptions provided by the developer, there would be another 12 homes built in a 2-year span after a 2-year break of construction. And so we've estimated those homes as well. And then on this next page 4, we're looking at, you know, if you were, in this case, if you were to tip the area to then provide an incentive to the developer, since there's a break between the phase 1 and phase 2, we, in the real worst case scenario, we would recommend setting up a separate area for phase 2. So that way, when you create the area and you get that, and you have that 20-year life, that you're only starting the clock on phase 1 for that, and then starting the clock on phase 2, you know, once that construction started, or once you issue that incentive financing. And Mike kind of hit on this, we are being conservative here, since these are rental homes and they're really standalone units. We want to check with the county auditor's office and assessor's office to make sure, to see how they're gonna treat these homes. So for now, we've assumed that they would still be in, well, these homes would, sorry, these are the sold units, so the tip area would be 20 years in life from the time of the issuance of bonds. But as I'm gonna get to in the next scenario with the rental units, we're also assuming a 20-year life, just because of standalone homes. If it was an apartment, we would definitely feel safe, even from the out jump, that, you know, we could have a 25-year life on a traditional tip area. But basically, over this 21-year period of collection, you would be collecting just over $1 million from this development based on our estimate.
We could pause there for
Overly
just,
conservative, because we're not assuming any increases in asset value over time or any trending value. Obviously, you know, there's inflation and things that could increase these property taxes over time.
hey Kyle,
Go ahead.
yeah. Just for some perspective here, the developer had estimated that the street and the water sewer would be a $500,000 investment. I think that was a bit low, and our JPR was saying maybe closer to $750,000 or $800,000. So you could see it would take quite a few years for the increment to actually pay back that investment. And that was not including the improvements to County Road 8, which we were going to attempt to get some from the county for that. But as you can see, that as what the city of Elkhart folks told me is that a residential tip just doesn't work for infrastructure. It doesn't generate enough increment. Thank you, Kyle.
Yeah, if you had an area that was building, you know, 200 homes, you know, we're only looking at, you know, what, 54 homes, I think, here, or somewhere in that neighborhood.
I think it was
More
30,
homes, obviously.
36.
36 altogether.
Oh, sorry, yeah, 36. So that's a real, I mean, this is a smaller development. But even before these changes in legislation, you know, we would say you really need a big number of homes to be built to really provide kind of an adequate incentive. But, you know, a lot of developers know that as well, so. And then if we jump to scenario 2, where we assume all 36 units are rental units, you're gonna have the same, we're gonna assume that the assessed value is gonna come in the same as if they were sold units, as on the assessment level. It could be different in that, you know, the assessor's office can look at the lowest of 3 methods of assessment, especially on rental units. So one of them can be the revenue model, which you know, is exactly what it sounds like. You look at the revenue that the rental units are generating, and that might be lower than your natural way of developing the property. So sometimes in the early years of development, it can assess it a little lower. Maybe you're trying to fill the units, you know, you don't have tenants, or maybe you're needing to charge lower rents, and it kind of grows off this assessment. For purposes of comparison, though, we're assuming that the assessment would be the same. And then what changes is the deduction. So prior to SA 1 2025, you didn't have any deduction on 2% for rental units. But now, starting in 26 and going to 2031, similar to the sold units, you're having deductions. So 19% in 2028, 25% in 2029, jumping up to 33.4% in 2031. About, you know, if you look at just 2031, it's half of the deduction amount on a rental unit than a sold unit. So as you can see in 2031, while the assessment would be about $6 million, you 2 million of that would be set aside and you'd only pay, the owner of the apartment would only pay taxes on 4 million. And that would generate, from these first 24 units, $92,000 of dollars. We compare that to the sold homes, that was 41,000, so just a little bit more than double. And you would expect that because the deductions are half on the 2% property, and you're also not having that homestead credit. So you would expect to be a little bit more than double. And then phase two, we're not gonna go through that, but, just assuming there's 12 more rental units a couple of years behind. And then this page will show, the full 20-year term, and like I mentioned before, and kind of box, but this, we're assuming that the TIF area, even in this case, the TIF area would only last 20 years from the issuance of debt. Just because these are standalone units and there's not 4 units in one building or anything like that. Just to be safe without, talking with the auditor and talking with council, we could place these in a 20-year allocation area life instead of a 25, as you're probably used to with your commercial and industrial buildings and TIF areas. But again, if you looked at it on a totality basis, bringing in 2.4 million of TIF over this term compared to, just over 1 million on the sold units. I think part of that is just, I would say, you're probably trying to get more of a deduction to homeowners, and that's what you're seeing here.
Yeah.
So that's a deep dive, but I think it's important to just kind of have a case study of what sold units versus rental units can generate, just as Mike said, as you guys are trying to, find that next project or are looking forward for the town's best interest.
Okay. So Kyle, it's safe to say that you do this type of work for other municipalities?
Yes, so as you can imagine, with this, I will say, they have a legislative session every year, sometimes a short session, sometimes a long session. 2025 was a long session and there was a lot of changes. This was, a pretty big property tax reform, and there was also lit changes, as you guys know. So it was a big year and we were, scrambling to start to model all this out and adjust to the changes in the law. And yes, definitely ran similar analysis for other units across the state of Indiana, and I just worked for the state of Indiana. And
Okay.
for units in the state of Indiana.
Okay. And what are you seeing from other municipalities in the state when it comes to residential? Are you seeing a shift more towards ownership or a shift more towards rentals? Or are you not, do you not have data along those lines?
So I mean, a lot of times it depends on, the developer and what they're trying to build, and, if they're wanting to hold on to the units or if they're wanting to sell them. So I guess I see a little bit of both. What I'm noticing though is it's, like I mentioned before, it's harder to give, adequate, incentives to developers on sold homes. Because it's just not generating a lot of TIF dollars, so it's hard to bridge any kind of, gap, like say you need to finance the infrastructure. And so in some cases, it's a little bit easier for the town to give an incentive for 2% property or rental property because the TIF is higher, and then maybe you're able, maybe you don't have to give all the TIF as a part of the incentive, maybe you can keep, a portion back every year. And you're still able to bridge that gap. Those are the questions and the things that we're looking into, when a project comes up. But I still see both, kind of projects. I mean, obviously having, sold homes in your community is a good thing, just like having new apartments. I would think that they're, a mix would be healthy.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Kyle?
Kyle, with the regular TIF, would those properties not be collecting, you mentioned the schools, It's been a
Referendum.
Yeah, the referendum numbers, are monies collected for the referendum on the rental tip, the regular tip or not?
Yeah, referendum, that's the, the good thing about TIP is it still sets aside the referendum,
Okay,
taxes, so those, regardless if it's in a TIP or not, those are set aside and go towards, the school referendum. And honestly, it's calculated on a percentage, so, based on the rate, so if assessed value goes up from new development, that's only gonna help the referendum.
the reason I'm not a huge fan of tipping residential areas because that's where babies come from, which feed schools. And it seems like all that, we don't get babies out of Belmont, okay? Or, but the growth in the schools is from residential. And
Right,
it seems like that's where we want our AV. We want that AV to be supporting our schools. And when we put that in the tip, we're pulling that AV away from the schools. But on the other hand, we want affordable housing and
well, my question is too, is I remember when Riverwalk was put in,
mhm.
and I would have to go back into my files to see, what actually the town maybe did when that went in.
You think the town helped some with that?
No, I don't think it did at all. I do remember, which this was how many years ago? That, we wanted sidewalks in there. I remember we insisted that there were sidewalks. We didn't want kids playing in the streets, and all of that. But I don't remember that. I'd have to look back in the old records that really we did any incentive at all. I mean, it was a subdivision. I mean,
What I would say though is look at the results of that. How many companies bought Riverwatch? Like as far as developed it, 3 companies went bankrupt trying to develop Riverwatch.
I don't know. How many houses are in Riverwatch at this point? And how many lots are vacant?
Don't think there's any vacant lots left.
I don't really think we were subsidizing housing until, I don't know, when did this start? The cost of housing has risen so
Oh,
much
yeah.
faster
Oh,
than
yeah.
our wages have, so it's been tougher. The affordability aspect of housing. I think, I don't know, it seems like I sent you guys something that pointed towards the 60s or 70s is when that gap started growing.
Well, see, and my question was too, and I really don't remember anything about, water, sewer, roads were asked to be done. I mean, it was a subdivision, the guys came in and they did it,
That's really no different than any other subsidy that we offer.
Right, I agree.
So let's take our new business that just came in,
Timber.
Timbrin. They just came in, they asked for a subsidy,
Mhm.
they asked for a 5-year abatement. And we granted it to them.
I agree.
So it's similar to what residential is asking us for as well. So it's really no different than that.
So, it just occurred to me, all of those deductions, those standard deductions that are now incorporated, that's like a permanent tax abatement for residential.
It is. Yeah,
Yeah,
and it doesn't go away.
No.
Whereas
ours
Timbrin
goes
got a
away.
5-year abatement,
5 years, yeah.
and they'll gradually step up and pay more over the 5 years. Whereas residential is actually decreasing year by year.
It's only owner occupied residential though, right?
What's
Yeah.
that?
It's only owner occupied residential.
Right,
It's
so
only on
my
the-
homestead exemption, I'm getting
Yeah.
a tax, I'm getting a tax abatement. I never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
That's because you're old.
So
Because you're old, Mike.
Yeah.
So I think Mike's right with home prices going up the way they have. Whether it's building a purchase property or purchasing a rental property. If you want to attract residential, which is what we've heard from our residents for a long time.
Well, we need it.
I mean, whenever we talk about a business expansion in town, we're always chastised and asked, why aren't we doing the same with the residential? So now we are. So,
I guess the difference would be the years that we're talking. Correct?
what do you mean?
Well, 5 versus, what was it, 20?
Well, but we have no control over this.
That's true.
We have control over, when Timber came to us, they asked for 5-year abatement. We could have said no,
We could have given
and
them
we
10
could have,
if they.
we could have given them 10.
Yeah.
We could have given them 10, we could have given them 5, we could have given them 3, or we could have said no.
I agree.
So we have control over our commercial abatements. With the new SB1, we have no control over the residential abatements that are happening, called an abatement reductions.
Interesting.
Trent's here, he may have some, Troy, sorry. It has been a names for me all day. Well, you're in the residential business, sort of, you're gonna invest.
Well,
some money.
I did have a question, just not being as familiar with TIFs as most of you probably up here, or Kyle, for you, what does determine the 20-year to 25-year for this commercial TIF that we're talking about, or who determines that? Or why would they make that distinction between the two?
Yeah, it's mostly just complex when you have rental units that are standalone homes. It's something that's I've been up for question for multiple years. At least that's my understanding of it. So it's pretty black and white when you have 1% sold home unit, and they're standalone single family homes. That you have to set up a residential TIF area to be able to capture those, and that TIF life is 20 years from the issuance of debt. And for a standard traditional TIF that we were used to before, these residential TIFs were set up, maybe back in 2018, or don't quote me on that, but the life of the TIF would be 25 years from the issuance of debt. And where it's kind of a gray area is in the middle, where you have rental units, but they're single family. I know there's a memo out there that, from many years ago that said, if you had, 4 units in one structure, that would for sure, constitute, and you could capture that in a traditional TIF. But again, I want to just check with bond counsel, Scott Frizzell, and maybe even the auditor's office on, hey, if these were rental units, would you be able to capture them in a 25-year traditional TIF? Or do we need to put them in a 20-year housing TIF just to be sure? And so that's where the distinction is.
Does it change at all if the percentages are mixed, where you have single family and 4+ unit properties?
In some cases, if we were being safe, we would just set up 2 areas. We'd set up an area with the apartments, as you say, and then, the 25-year life, then we could set up a 20-year life, just to guarantee that the auditor's office will allow capture and the computer software system. But we could also, like you said, check and just see before if you had a rental home, if you'd be able to capture those, for that 25-year life. Basically, it comes down to, if it's traditional TIF in their system, they basically determine if it's residential, if it's capturable or not, if there's homestead property. And so that's really the question we'd have to check in on. But we could either set up 2 separate TIFs, or one TIF after checking.
So what was the difference you said on the TIF length for rental compared to a home ownership? Is there any?
So housing TIF is 20 years, and then a traditional TIF is 25 years.
So the housing is like a rental? Is that what you're calling
Certainly on
housing?
sold homes, you can't capture sold homes
Right.
with that, have a homestead deduction, unless they're in a housing TIF. That's why we have to set it up in a housing TIF and it has 20-year life. Again, we just have to check on rental homes with no homestead, if that can have a 20-year life, or if it has to have a 20-year life, or it can have a 25-year life.
Okay.
That's that gray area. I would want to check with bond counsel before giving you guys a definitive answer.
Great. Thank you.
So Kyle, what am I overlooking here as sources? If the town council wanted to subsidize infrastructure within a housing development, residential development, I know I could use some edit dollars, I could propose some edit dollars, but we don't want to do that because those are probably going away. Can the town use monies from other TIF in some way, from one of our manufacturing TIFs?
It would have to be in serving or benefiting, you
Manufacturing,
know, this new allocation area territory, so if it was close enough and you talked with Scott and Alex and they could get comfortable with it, using that product, then maybe you could. In some cases, I have seen that, I've seen a combination where, you know, you set up the tip, where they even needed more of a gap because the housing tip wasn't creating enough, where they had to pledge the housing tip, but then they also used some, close by traditional tip as well to, you know, bridge that gap. And
providing
it really
housing,
just comes down to the level of need, like sometimes, you know, in some bigger communities where they don't need housing as much, they don't provide incentives, for, you know, for homestead homes or for failed homes. But then some of the smaller communities where, you know, they're really trying to attract homes, their hands are kind of tied and they do provide incentives. And a lot of times they have to provide, you know, close to 100% of the TIF, if not all of the TIF, just because, again, you know, taxes aren't that high on homes. But yeah, there's a chance that you could use close by, TIF as in serving and benefiting the new territory.
it's probably an attorney question, but providing housing for employees is that a benefit?
There you go, you're asking the right questions.
Oh, indeed.
I'm still trying to get over the fact that I've got to meet your approval for this.
It's not even me, it's Scott. He's the
Yes,
one
that's
really
right.
got to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Scott's the wet blanket tonight.
It's exactly right.
We only got 3
Cynthia,
wood
nonetheless.
manufacturers.
Yeah,
This would help.
What's that?
We have 3 wood manufacturers in town that would help sales.
Yeah,
Oh, wait, except for our weed, that would have helped there.
There is something to, there's something that sticks in my head. There is some benefit provided for employee housing, but I'm not sure what structure which statutory structure it falls under.
and then how do you even monitor that or enforce that? It's,
Yeah, I think that's probably part of the issue.
that's the reason it's tough.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you're working with large volumes of homes like what's happening in Goshen on the south,
yeah, Cherry
Cherry Creek.
Creek. Yeah. Okay.
I will say that having the consolidated economic development area like you guys have with multiple allocation areas in it, that kind of allows a little bit more flexibility on where you can spend the money. So it's glad that we have that and, you know, that you guys have that in place as an RDC. Because that, if you know, you are trying to use TIF from other allocation areas, it's a little bit easier to get comfortable with. I'm speaking on behalf of Scott, but it does help that you guys have a consolidated EDA, and that is very strategical.
Yeah, the challenge is our tips are pretty,
Tied up.
yeah, we've got those tied up for the next year or two.
Yeah.
Unless there's some tax abatements coming off that, well, no, our 5-year financial plan, we're just tight on tip right now, I think. Tight.
Yeah.
So it sort of seems like it's a rental or a mix of rentals and home ownership and a residential tip, something that generates something.
Yeah. So along those lines, let's
Hmm.
talk a little bit about,
Are we done with Kyle or should we keep him on?
yeah, I guess, any more questions for Kyle?
I don't have.
No.
Okay,
Thank you, Kyle.
thanks, Kyle. Appreciate the insight.
Thanks for having me. Don't hesitate to reach out if you have any like property tax questions related to these subjects. We'll get those answered. Guys.
Okay,
Thanks.
great, thanks. Okay. So then I guess the next question from that is, what is our desire for residential? As a council?
I think a mix.
I think a mix would be wonderful. I mean, yeah, because, like I said, you can, some people say, well, I don't want to rent living next door to me. Well, I have a house next door to me that they rent it. You know, I mean, I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
And I think rentals are better because we are not talking, and don't get me wrong by this, but owning a home would be more of an executive type home where you've got rentals or more the workers that, are looking for, maybe they're only gonna be working for 4 years here. Where somebody that owns a company or something like that would establish themselves permanently.
Yeah.
We would need, and I really believe we do need both funds.
We do. I mean, if you look historically, and Mike shared some data with us on rental versus owned properties.
Right.
And if you look at generationally,
Mhm.
just think of the workforce today, right? My grandparents, my grandfather, he worked at the same company for 40 years
Oh,
and he retired from there. And that was the norm.
Right.
So you worked one job for 40 years and you lived in that community that you lived in and you bought a house. You needed to be close to work, so you bought a house in that community. What's the average? What did they say? And this goes back probably 5 years ago, that college students graduating college 5 years ago, over the lifetime of their career, their professional career, they would change jobs 7 times. And they would end up only spending like 5 years in the field that they got their degree in. So they may not be in the same community
I agree.
for more than 5 years. So why would I buy a house if I'm gonna get a job here? And then in 5 years, I'm gonna move to Salt Lake City to get a different job, or I'm gonna move from Bristol to Carmel. or
I think
from-
think we've seen that in families,
Yeah.
families were always here. Now
Yeah.
I've got a son in Kansas City and I've got,
Yeah,
that people are, I
So-
don't want to use the word transient.
I was
but
just gonna
that's what
say,
they are.
people are more transient
Yeah.
nowadays.
Yes.
It is, I mean, that's just a fact.
You go where the work is and we've got good work here.
Yeah.
And yet not everybody can afford a home
Right,
that are the everyday workers, I guess is what I want to call them. I don't want to say anything against anybody that, right, I was an everyday worker.
Yeah.
But, yeah, people don't have longevity at a job like they
no,
used
they
to,
don't.
unless they're
They don't.
owning the business, running the business and that type of thing.
Well, the employers, I hate to say it, a lot of employers aren't as loyal to their employees as they
That's true.
were years ago.
That's
And vice versa. Employees are not as loyal to their employers. So it is a more transient workforce.
I think both, we need both, period.
Yeah,
I don't think rental's necessarily the bad part. It's what's the level of rental?
That's.
Is it a
another thing.
$1,200 a month rental? Is it $2,500 a month rental?
right.
What kind of person is it bringing into town? Like what's more,
Yeah,
rental is important, but what level of rental is it? Like what benefits the town more?
Yeah.
I mean, we have good jobs in town, but 50% of employers, you can't get a 2,000, like those employees can't afford a $2,000 rental. But does that mean we necessarily want $1,000, $1,200 rentals in town?
yeah.
And I don't have a clue as to what rental, amounts are.
Okay.
I would have to look into that and research that.
Yeah. Like, and I think most recently, we probably, and I don't wanna pick on any rentals. But let's face it, during the last when we discuss Bristol Commons, there's a stigma. And I'm sorry, that stigma is on the west side of town. And I don't think that was fair to Bristol Commons. Personally. I think the stigma that is in town was because we have an absentee owner. Now, they are making improvements, but it has a stigma to it.
Mhm.
And I don't think that's fair. Because I think rentals are not bad. I mean, there's a lot of rentals, there's a lot of rental homes in this town. I would
Oh,
venture
yeah,
to say,
there's a lot.
I would venture to say there's 30% rentals in this town.
Yeah. More than you would think.
And I don't think the younger generation coming up now necessarily wants to own a house.
No.
They would rather rent. If they wanna move, they're not tied down. It doesn't tie up their funds. If they wanna find something cheaper to rent, they simply move out and rent something cheaper. So I don't think rentals are a bad thing.
I don't either.
Um,
As long as it, managed properly and
right,
that type of thing. Like you said, we've had experience with bad ones.
Yeah.
Really bad ones.
and I don't think it's,
And those owners didn't even live in the state, let alone
Right.
the town.
right,
I mean, so I guess that's another side of it. I mean, if we're gonna talk about treating this like an abatement, could there be stipulations on the TIF revenue going back if an area is led? So if it's or if it's a rental property and we do the TIF, showing going back, well, if it goes into disrepair, could that money stop flowing back to them? Treat it like an abatement, where there's stipulations have to be met?
On the TIF, well, I mean, Kyle could probably answer, Kyle, I'm certain could probably answer the question better, but, that question of the abatement, contemplating it as an abatement, isn't at the, I don't think that's at the TIF level, that's not what that's a function of
Right.
property tax law,
Yeah.
that is really outside the purview of the increment, in the TIF process. I mean, I suppose.
I mean, as far as that money returning to the investor.
Yeah, I mean, I think, could you have strings attached to, a TIF bond, a development bond to help pay for the infrastructure? If you tied it that way,
I don't know if you could.
yeah.
Since
I
it's
don't- I'm not sure
residential,
how
I'm
it
not
would
sure
look
that
like.
you could.
Yeah,
but if it's not a residential TIF,
Oh, if it's
if it's a traditional TIF, not a residential. Because you said a residential TIF is typically an owned property, not a rental property.
right.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking I'm the developer, and I just put $2 million on the line and I have a contract with the town to get reimbursed for 1.8. And that's dependent on some future homeowner keeping his home maintained?
Well, no homeowner.
We're
rental.
talking homeowners, rentals.
Yeah, but the developer may not be owning that rental.
I mean, one way to look at it, to give the council some edification here is what, some other municipalities have done varying success when it comes to rentals in particular. And I don't hold this up necessarily as a model, but, there are other mechanisms available, other enforcement mechanisms available to the town to help ensure some quality standards particularly for rental homes. And it kind of falls under the purview of a code enforcement building department idea. The city of South Bend, for example, has a rental safety verification program. So if you're a rental in the city of South Bend, you register, and by simply registering, you submit to these certain requirements that you're gonna provide habitable housing, and someone can come take a look at it, and it's gonna be not an eyesore, healthy, et cetera, et cetera. And so that gives, from the town's police power ability, to help enforce some housing standards and without being intimately familiar with any of the issues, with some of the prior rental homes. something along those lines may help, provide additional authority for the town to act. Cause tying up, the point's well taken, tying up those 15, 20-year, development standards, quality standards to the current developer. If I were a developer, I don't know if I'd take that deal. That's, you know, 20 years from now, I would like to have sold out and moved away. Developer and not have to repay because, someone didn't maintain it. So I think that's the mechanism to try and enforce that type of, that quality probably comes from a different direction than through the TIF. I'd say.
Sounds like a good idea.
Another question I have on, and this goes back to Bristol Commons. So the R3 was substantial, that was pretty dense. That was 36 homes on, what, 4 or 5 acres, 5 acres?
4.9.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is that not a density? Is that part of the reason there was a no vote? I guess that's Kathy and Doug. Is that primarily the reason?
That was a big reason,
Yeah,
among other things.
Okay.
yeah, there was something else for me.
Okay.
I don't know what it was for Doug.
The R1 currently, they could get 26 homes on there, probably. Yeah, duplexes, single family connected, but. Okay. I think that's just helpful for developers to know that we're not really looking for that level of density in town, so we're
No,
more of the
yeah.
R1s.
I think if that was in town here, no problem.
Oh,
But out in a rural area like that, it just didn't fit. It was just too much. And when I mean in town, I mean downtown, across from
Yeah.
Encino's or something.
right, yeah.
So that you're saying the density would have been okay like that in town?
Yeah.
Okay.
We might want to take a look at our downtown zoning. Steve and I were talking about this staff this morning. We have a lot of areas in the downtown that are residential that are zone B2 business.
Oh, yeah,
And
got one next door to me.
so we might want to take a look at maybe doing some rezoning there. And maybe zone it to a zone that matches the type of density we're willing to accept in that.
Well, the majority of the area downtown has always been, business. It was, if you wanted to build a house, that's when you had to go even close for downtown.
So, but that's when the conflict starts. So like our business right down here was right across the street from a bunch of residential, or a lot of residential folks. There's some conflicts there.
That's why it's all scattered, because, it was basically all business. And then when people wanted to build homes and all of that, you'd have a home in between businesses. And, it was just that way.
Is that addressed a bit in the overlay standards?
Not really. Not that aspect. But once we get the overlay completed, I mean, there's not much residential. It doesn't impact residential very much, I don't think. But maybe we should come back and take a look at the town, what it's currently zoned, the areas, and say, let's be a little more definitive about where our residential areas are and zone appropriately. Because right now, I guess somebody could come in and buy a bunch of homes, tear them down and put a business there with no rezoning. So is that what we want to have happen in some of our residential areas?
Some of the houses that were built, especially on Main Street, there was no zoning back at that time. You wanted to build a house, you build a house.
Yeah.
Like mine.
Well, and
1853, I mean, there was no zoning.
So speaking of that, I think a lot of the current residential areas were purposely zoned B2, so it's
Mhm.
kind of curious why that would have happened. But
They may have even been used, even though it's a
Yeah.
home now, it may have been used as a business.
Maybe. It might be something we take a look at.
It's like Camille's used to be a home, now it's a business.
Good example.
Yeah.
Mhm. Well, anyways, that's helpful for me.
So he's gonna look into more of some of the other things that he was talking about that he wasn't sure of.
Kyle?
Yeah.
I don't remember which things he was gonna look into.
I think a lot of it turned on that question of what do you do when a,
If it's half and half and all of that.
yeah, and their conservative approach is call everything 20 years. Um, as opposed to going for the 25 and being assessed incorrectly.
Yeah, and he was gonna find out if, the length of period of time and if it was this for that.
It's probably difficult. It's probably a difficult question to answer
Mhm.
hypothetically. It's probably something where you'd almost need to look at a development plan or a prospect to say, here's what we envision here, and I think you can do it, but it's probably more on a case by case analysis, I would think, because it sounds like there's some discretion, at the taxman's, level as to how that's counted.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is, R1 type density, rental ownership, be nice if it's a mix. And any additional questions from you? Anybody?
I have a slew of them, but I'm.
We might need a follow-up.
Okay.
So,
So,
yeah, I was gonna ask too, Troy, because I know it's been a while since you guys have been in.
Right.
Just wanted to are you still on the same path as you were before?
We are, so we met, with Natasha at the Elkhart County, I forget the exact title, planning and development. So we sat down with her about a month and a half, 2 months ago. Our biggest question outside of how this TIF works and, what we're looking at their structuring is the type of home that's gonna best suit Bristol.
Yeah.
And so we went through a study that, was it MACOG, I believe, or
what was the housing study?
the housing study that was done in maybe 22 or 23. So we're still waiting on a little bit of feedback from her. She was gonna hopefully provide some more answers on that. But yeah, we're looking at, hey, is it all single family? Is it like we talked about mixed use? Size wise, like are we looking at, retirees, that we have our our parents' friends that are looking to downsize, is that an option that we're looking at versus bringing in, to your point, families that are gonna help populate the schools and provide more of the workforce. So just,
Well, no ability to downsize is hurting our schools. There are nowhere for families to move in because all of our parents are still sitting in their 4-bedroom houses, even though they don't want them or need them, there's nowhere to go. So like we're definitely seeing that in Middlebury
agree.
system. I'm sure you're seeing that here. And I think too, there's such a swing in, if you look at this study, there's either really low income that's highly needed, and then there's the 65 and up, 1,700 to 2,500 per month, fewer bedrooms, well maintained, roommate ready. So like a lot of what this study says is 0 to 2-bedroom homes, which we would have never said. It would have been like 3, put a fourth one in the basement with this cool 1,200 square foot plan we have. I think that this would work out well. The study contradicts a lot of what we assumed. Again, what's good for Bristol? And I think when you think about rentals, and I think what our vision is for a rental, we want to be in this long term. We don't want them to look like rentals. Everything will be maintained, sprinkled, maintenance is done, so it won't look like a lot of rentals look and carry that stigma. But I think it's, just making that decision, right? Are we having shared walls? Are we having single family? Are we splitting them? Our vision at first wasn't really to sell any, but if it's like kind of, you're like looking for a mix, okay, could we look at, we'll sell 25%, we're gonna build them this way, we'll hang on to 75. And I think there's room there, running these numbers that he had. I mean, a tip for us at 60 units would afford us, $4 million even over the 20-year time frame. I think that's plenty for the infrastructure that we would need to put in. So I think there's some ways to get creative. I'm sort of encouraged actually about sitting down and looking at these numbers. I think really understanding the demographic we're going after and what you all see for that is probably, that's our biggest question mark. I think we're ready to go. We've got drawings done, traffic studies, all the things, we've got we already have a huge investment into this and we're kind of sitting, waiting like, okay, with the laws changing, we kind of had to wait that out. But really, what would your input be on what would benefit Bristol the most? What do we think is going to help the community? I think that's a big part of where we're at. We want to build community and put a walking path in, kind of those types of things. But I think some input from you all looking through this data is very interesting. If you had a few minutes to refresh, I'm sure you guys have all gone through it, but maybe refresh it, refresh your minds on it a little bit and give us a little bit of feedback too when you have some time.
Yeah, absolutely. So are you still looking at the 60 units?
Yeah, I mean, it
Okay.
fluctuates, 58 to 63, kind of depending on how we lay
Yeah.
them out at this point.
And how many, that's 12 acres?
15.
15.
15.
Okay,
And it's beautiful, like you haven't walked the land. Go,
Yeah, it is
just-
nice.
It is such a pretty spot, leave
Yeah.
as many trees as we can, and then give it that high-end look and feel. But make it as affordable as we can and still make it cash flow, right? I mean, I think we have no interest in low income. So that's where, if that's what you guys are looking for, I would say this would probably not be a project that would fit, what we want to do. It won't work, right? Even with all the dollars available, it just doesn't count. We run the numbers a million ways for Sunday. So we don't want to manage that either. We want-
I'm sorry to
You're
cut in. So you were talking about, retirement, family, bedrooms, all of this stuff. What is there, do you have in mind like a mix? Say of 2-bedroom homes and 3-bedroom homes and, that's what I'm looking at. Because you do have people that want to downsize and yet you want to bring in families. So, and not only that, but it's to the benefit of the retired people to have families in their neighborhood. Of course, not all retirees feel that way, but I mean,
I think
there
there's
are a
an
lot of
answer for
people,
sure.
I mean, the demographics, the two groups
I agree.
really can feed, with each other. That's what it's all about.
Natasha, actually, in our meeting with her, brought up a good point that we kind of missed as well, just we're a little bit older than she is. But, in her situation is, there's so many people that are 25 to 35 that are looking for roommates even.
Yeah, yeah.
That
Yeah.
we weren't necessarily considering, but we've talked, I know Mike, a little bit, with Amazon and the facility going in there and the type of job that creates, whether it's family coming in or again, couple engineers that are gonna be here for 2 or 3 years and they're not looking for anything permanent, but
Right.
yeah. Is that an option? Absolutely. That's really where we're stuck.
Yeah, because that builds,
Finding that right mix.
yeah, that builds community when you've got everything.
Yeah. Well, lots of green space, right? We looked at all of the retention and thought about some really cool places. Okay, we can put benches here. There's green space for people to, mix and mingle regardless of the generation. I think there is when you drive in on the left-hand side, we talked about having, shared wall units, like townhouse looking, very, nice, modern kind of look. And maybe those are your 2 bedrooms. And then the single families, we looked at just even doing a basement with an egress. Okay, we could do a 3-bedroom with a 4th in the basement type of thing to give some extra space and sort of mix the space up. But looking through the study, that's where we're kind of like, gosh, we need to just pick a lane.
We don't wanna get it wrong.
Right.
Right.
I don't know if you can get it wrong,
Right.
but
Yeah.
And we weren't really considering any 2-bedroom. And then we talked to Natasha, we really poured through the study, and honestly, that's what it's telling us to do. It's telling us to mix spaces, but don't leave out the 2-bedroom, the 1 to 2-bedroom need and the people that want roommate ready. So when you think about that, a 2-bedroom, you each want your own bathroom, right? Like we could have some really cool layouts in the floor plans, I think could be really exciting, but
Yeah.
that's one of the top things that this is all about is roommate ready. People
Yeah,
are marrying later, they are working more transient, like you said, 2-3 years. This Amazon facility is also going to be one of the most automated that they have in the whole country. So it is not your typical picker packer. It is your engineers, your software engineers, things like that. So I think it is a different demographic coming to town than, we're probably used to, which is great. Yeah, where do they want to live?
Yeah.
What do they want to live in?
Yeah.
So I think that's really the question we have to answer is
And
it?
I've got a granddaughter right now that has a roommate. you
Yeah.
know,
Oh, my God.
that's what she wants, you know.
That was
and-
like Tasha's point. She's like, we have nowhere to go. We don't actually like where we live, but we don't have a good option.
Right.
You know, they're driving from Mishawaka, spending, $3,500 a month on rent. And they work here, right? So, it's like, give us someplace like that. And that's a population we didn't even really honestly consider. We thought the same thing, family and retiring. We're like, well, there's actually a big group of those folks too.
Can you send us your current layouts?
Sure.
If you can get that to Mike.
Yeah.
Yeah, get that to Mike, please, and we'd like
I'd
to
like to see it again.
just kind of review it again, because we're definitely, well, I'm definitely interested, I don't know.
Oh, I am
Council,
too.
I mean,
I am too,
which I, okay,
me too.
Absolutely.
okay, thank you. Okay. Other questions for us, Mike?
Good, thank you.
Okay. That was really the only thing on the agenda.
Pretty much.
Did you have anything else? I'll just go
Well,
around.
some project reports Thursday night,
Okay,
pictures.
Kathy, I know you got nothing there, but anything?
No, see me after if you want to go to the roundtable meeting.
One at the Essen House.
Alex, anything?
I think in the run-up, just a preview, I think in the run-up to the March 5 meeting, we may want to meet in executive session for a few minutes beforehand to discuss some litigation matters, but
Okay,
nothing pressing and
okay,
just to put that on everybody's radar.
okay.
March 5 executive session.
I think so. And just,
Executive session before March 5.
yeah, before
Oh,
before the March
Yeah.
5 meeting,
Yeah.
Right.
6:40.
like the same day or a different day?
And the same day, yeah, it's the
Okay.
same
Oh,
day.
same thing.
That's what I was
Okay.
getting at.
Yeah, just so we can talk about things.
Okay.
6:30,
Yeah,
6:45.
maybe.
What,
Give enough time.
Probably 6:30.
Yeah.
well, do we, I'll just throw it out there, do we need to look at venue? Cause I think March 5 could be a packed house.
Yeah, it could be, couldn't it?
There's good potential.
Um,
So,
Do we have options on public input other than a public hearing? And I know people can submit public, all right, they can submit comments, written,
Britain's remonstrance, yeah.
yeah. Is there a way if we have 400 people show up, we decide we don't want to sit through a 6-hour meeting, can we say, okay, we're going to table and come back in 2 weeks or way to do that?
okay,
Yeah, you sure could. Yeah, the notice that we publish says that that hearing can be continued from time to time.
okay,
So to the extent that needs to
Sounds
happen,
Time to time?
from time to time.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's an opportunity. I mean, encouraging written remonstrance isn't a bad idea either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To the extent anyone will take you up on it.
probably not.
Probably not, but
It is an option.
it's an
Okay.
option. Yeah.
All right, well, let's plan the executive session then the day of,
Okay,
and if we need to
6:30?
continue.
I'll,
Are we talking 6:30?
I think so. I mean, we really don't have too much to talk about. It's just an update.
Yeah.
of things.
well, we have
Okay.
to publish a time.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Yeah, that's fair.
why don't you tell me how many things you want to
Say what
talk about?
time it is.
and
Let's do
I
6:30.
want to talk about.
6:30.
Let's do 6:30 then.
Okay, 6:30.
Okay,
Got your answer, Karen.
Mhm.
Anything else, Alex?
No,
Okay.
no, thank you.
Any questions about upcoming agenda items?
Yes, I'd like to add to the agenda for Thursday night about the homecoming.
sure. Well, you're already on the agenda.
Well, yeah, but that's different. That's board meeting comments. That's not having to do with,
You want to be a public speaker?
I'll be a public speaker.
We will put you.
I will come up and
This
announce I am a
Thursday?
citizen speaking,
Okay,
not a
Like-
board member.
This Thursday, coming Thursday?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
anything else? If not, is there a motion to adjourn?
Make the motion to adjourn.
Oh, I second that.
Second by Kathy, all